welcome to the program. I'm Joker Rogers. 20 Al-Shabaab militants in the Yasaman area of Somalia's central Hiran region have been killed, and that's according to the Somali National Army, which says it neutralized the militants and injured dozens more during a foiled attempt to storm a military base yesterday. The army says 3 soldiers died during the fighting. The state news agency is also reporting that 4 other militants were killed in a separate incident in the Balad district of the Middle Shabelle region the previous night. This comes in the wake of intensified operations in the northern and eastern parts of Hiran region. Somalia's military, backed by pro-government forces, U.S. troops and the African Union peacekeeping mission have made significant gains in recent weeks in their campaign against Al-Shabaab. Somalia's president vowed to wage war against the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group when he assumed office in August this year. Over 900,000 people have been affected by floods in 29 counties across South Sudan and in the southern part of Abyei administrative area. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which put out the figures, says that the worst affected states are northern Bahr al-Ghazal, Warab, Unity and western Equatoria. Increasing water levels reported in Rubkona and Bentiu towns in Unity State were putting pressure on existing dikes. The collapse of a key bridge in the western Bahr el-Ghazal state continues to hamper humanitarian response to about 50,000 people living in the area. Funding shortfalls and insecurity have also hampered aid to the area. Well, 30 African countries voted in favor of a UN resolution rejecting Moscow's contentious referendums in 4 Ukrainian regions that it declared part of Russia. 19 countries abstained, including Eritrea, that had previously voted to reject a UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Mali, the Central African Republic, Ethiopia, Congo-Brazzaville, South Africa, Sudan, Uganda and Zimbabwe also abstained. Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Djibouti, Equatorial Guinea and Sao Tome were absent from the UN General Assembly during the vote. Earlier this month, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba toured Africa to counter Russia's apparent hold on the continent and persuade leaders to support Kyiv. He cut the visit short after Russia intensified the bombardment of Ukraine. Well, after Africa barely contributes to global greenhouse gas emissions, yet it's paying an outsized price. This is according to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who made this known during a meeting marking the 20th anniversary of the African Union. He told the Security Council that the world is heading straight off a climate cliff, and for many Africans, this is not a distant threat, but a daily reality.
We are heading straight off a climate cliff. For many Africans, this is not a distant threat, but a daily reality. Africa barely contributes to global greenhouse gas emissions, yet it is paying an outsized price. This is a textbook case of moral and economic injustice. In the Horn of Africa, for example, people are facing the threat of famine after 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons, a first in over 40 years. In the Sahel, drought and land degradation are exacerbating tensions between farmers and herders. At the same time, communities in southern Africa face hurricanes and flash floods. Le recours à la force est trop souvent considéré comme la seule méthode de résolution de différends. Les changements inconstitutionnels de gouvernement se multiplient. Au Sahel, Daesh et les affiliés d'Al-Qaïda perpétuent leurs funestes attaques et cherchent à étendre leur emprise. Dans le corne de l'Afrique, en Éthiopie, dans l'Est de la République démocratique du Congo, au Mali, au Soudan et en Libye, des conflits prolongés et une situation humanitaire désastreuse.
Well, let's get more on the issues affecting Africa, and let's talk to Ejeta Otoniyo, an African affairs analyst who joins us via Zoom from Lagos, Nigeria. You're welcome to Network Africa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Joker. Thanks for having me.
Yes, certainly. It appears a lot is going on with the Russia invasion of Ukraine, how it affects Africa. Ukrainian officials are touring Africa to get their support. There's so many issues that affects Africa and, you know, within itself and, of course, with the Western world as well. But it appears that not everybody is together. Why does it appear that Africa itself is divided?
Well, I will relate this to a near collapse of the African Union, the spirit that used to drive the African Union. And essentially,
We do apologize. We appear to have lost contact with Ejeta. We do hope to reestablish contact with him to discuss all issues affecting Africa. But let's quickly take some other stories before that. The military leader in Chad, Mohamed Idris Deby, has named a veteran opposition politician, Saleh Kebzabo, as the new prime minister as he seeks to stave off protests against continued army rule. The appointment comes several days after a national forum confirmed General Deby as transitional president for the next few years and delayed promised elections. Mr. Kebzabo, 75, was a presidential candidate himself several times, standing against General Deby's father, Idris Deby. The general assumed power in April last year after his father was killed in a battle against rebel forces. Last month, the African Union appealed in vain for the military not to extend its rule beyond an agreed 18-month interim period. Well, several droughts followed by the worst floods in 30 years have led to rocketing food prices and left a record 2.1 million people in Chad acutely hungry. Well, this is according to the United Nations agency, who estimate that as a result of the climate disaster, 10% of all children under 5 are affected by acute malnutrition. Well, we have re-established the contact with Ejeta Otonio and we'll bring you the reports on Chad malnutrition after this conversation. But let's quickly get this conversation going. Thank you for joining us once again. I was asking you why Africa and, you know, Africans seem so divided.
yes, I was saying that we've had a collapse of the spirit of unity that had ruled the African Union for quite some time now. And that's because of the loss of the grip of the traditional relationships that African countries used to have with the West. Now, China as a country, which is a major backer of Russia, has made a very big inroad into African countries. And whether you like it or not, the issue of economic interest is playing out in all of these. It used to be that Africa used to be the centerpiece of every nation's foreign policy in the days of yore, but that is not the case anymore. So whether some countries abstain, because most of the countries in Africa abstained from voting in favor of the resolution, that speaks volume. It meant that they were not keen on supporting Ukraine or the West, as it will appear. So you will see a complete shift from the interest of the West. And this also had not been helped in recent times by the attitude of NATO in getting involved in some of these flashpoints that occurred in Africa, Syria, and so many other nations in the past. So you will notice some form of disavowal by African countries against the West. So that has really played out in this, in the results of the resolution, which condemned the annexation of Ukrainian cities as part of Russia. So that's exactly the point, Joke.
Right. So a country like Nigeria seems to be one of those speaking, you know, with both sides of the mouth. We have heard the Nigerian foreign authorities saying on one side that, condemning the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. On the other hand, they're asking both to come together to sort out the problems. Does this speak of lack of, importance for the country on the foreign scene?
My answer to that is simple. If Nigeria appears to be speaking from both sides of its mouth, it means that there are interests that are dictating that. For example, the economic interest also will dictate that. If China, for example, plays a very big role in our economic activities and so many other things, decides that, well, Nigeria should play this sit on the fence role as regards the resolution, there's scarcely anything we can do because we're talking about economy. And the economy plays more than 80% role in your political or foreign policy dealings. And that's the reason why we're having this. It's not a question of empathy for those, for the Ukrainians who are suffering the harshest invasion that any country could visit on them. It's a question of the interests of these countries that are concerned. And the West, for so many decades now, have turned their back on African countries to the benefit of China. And if you like, the diplomatic shuttle of the foreign minister of Russia also played a very big role against that of Kuleba, who had to take flight quickly to go back to his country when the bombardments were getting heavier. So that's exactly what's playing out, Joker.
Speaking of the Ukrainian's foreign minister, talking about touring African countries to get their support against Russia. Going forward, how do you think this crisis can be resolved, and do you think Africa has a role to play in it?
This crisis is an ego trip, the West and Russia. If they decide to resolve it, they should be able to resolve it if they drop their ego, and especially NATO. NATO has played quite an ignoble role in the war that is playing out between Russia and Ukraine. We cannot hide the fact that they precipitated this crisis. There was no reason for the admission or the near admission of Ukraine into NATO. It was like taking the battle to Russia, and Russia had to react one way or the other. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty or the pros and cons of that decision, but they are the major cause. The West, if they want to settle it, they should be able to settle it and call for a roundtable conference to resolve the matter. And if you like, Putin in recent times has been showing some inclinations towards talks. So the West should be able to accept that olive branch and drop their grandstanding and talk and save these people who are dying in droves from dying. Africa has no role to play. To answer your question, Africa is far away. We can only do it diplomatically. And even if you are going to do it diplomatically, then you must have some hold on these big nations. Africa scarcely has any hold on any big nation that is involved in this crisis. So really, we're just sitting back and watching it play out.
Right. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that today. African Affairs Analyst Ejeta Otonio, thank you for coming today on Network Africa.
Thank you so very much, Joke.
Let's now bring you that story from Chad, where severe drought followed by the worst floods in 30 years have led to rocketing food prices and left a record 2.1 million people in the country acutely hungry. This is according to United Nations agencies who estimate that as a result of the climate disaster, 10% of all children under 5 are affected by malnutrition.
On a bed at the Notre Dame des Apôtres Hospital in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad, 28-year-old Fatime Mahmat Idris feeds her gaunt toddler through a feeding tube. When the harvest failed, her husband sought work in a gold mine in the north, leaving no food for her and their 3 children. My child has been in hospital for over a week because she's sick and too weak to eat. When we arrived here, she was given milk with a syringe and regular injections every day. Now she's much better and her face is changing. Fatime is far from being the only mother facing this situation. According to the head of administration at the nutrition unit, this year only, 1,700 children have been hospitalized, more than the last 2 years.
My child has been hospitalized here for a week. At the beginning, he was vomiting and having a lot of diarrhea. He had fever all the time, couldn't eat and couldn't sleep. As a result, he was losing a lot of weight and was getting weaker and weaker. Now that he's in the hospital, he's much better. He's taking milk and eating the enriched porridge. We don't have the means, and fortunately, the care is free.
Unfortunately, it may not only be their physical growth that is affected.
When a child is malnourished, there is decrease in cognitive abilities, so it directly influences profitability, both academically and in terms of economic productivity.
As a result of the climate disaster, 10% of all children under 5 are affected by acute malnutrition, and 1 in 3 will suffer from stunted growth, according to UNICEF. If the situation does not improve, a whole generation in Chad could see their future compromised because of malnutrition.
South Africa is hosting its World Maritime Day parallel event this week with over 178 International Maritime Organization member delegates in attendance. They are talking greener shipping. The gathering at the Durban International Convention Center is looking at how the world can make concrete contributions and collaborate on innovative and mitigation strategies geared towards addressing the impact of maritime transport on climate change. Our correspondent, Brian Pugeni, reports.
Shipping is the future. The technologies.
The World Maritime Day parallel event is meeting under the theme New Technologies for Greener Shipping, with a focus on collaboration and capacity building, the 4th Industrial Revolution and sustainable maritime industry and the blue economy. Host country South Africa has about 3,000 kilometers of coastline positioned along the sea trading route with 8 commercial ports.
The ultimate goal is to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emission across the globe for sustainable development. The big question we must answer is, how do we get to the future that is sustainable, which facilitates global seaborne trade from all corners of the globe?
Shipping carries over 80% of world trade, providing the most economic and environmentally sustainable way of transporting cargoes. IMO has adopted more than 50 conventions to make shipping safer and to protect the marine environment.
Several panel discussions focused on strengthening partnerships and digitalization for safer and efficient shipping, while an exhibition hall was set up for different maritime partners who contribute towards the International Maritime Organization's goals.
Well, there are 2 things. One is regional collaboration on maritime sustainable development, on training and development, on economic development, and then, of course, making sure that we can grow the ocean economy, not only for South Africa, but for Africa, in terms of global trade, logistics development, ports development, and ultimately having countries take ownership for their own maritime development.
You know, IMO supports maritime globally, and Nigeria is not exempted. They are working actively with us, and as at the last time we had an audit report in 2017, what needs to be put in place was given to us, and we have we're still working. I can say categorically that we have cleaned up almost 80% of the things we need to do, and it is still ongoing. So we're on track.
The three-day event continues till Friday the 14th, and Nigeria's Minister for Transport, Muazu Sambo, is expected to join on Thursday. The world relies on a safe, secure, and efficient international shipping industry, which is an essential component of any program for future sustainable green economic growth in a sustainable manner. All the delegates gathered here are collectively making commitments towards greener shipping. Hopefully all will also walk the talk for the climate's sake. From Durban International Convention Center, Brian Pugeni, Channels Television News.
52-year-old Libyan Ali Rukebi has launched an initiative which aims to clean the waste and garbage that are widespread on the beaches of Libya, hoping to put an end to the pollution. For 13 years, Rukebi has been holding these beach cleanups, which he has dubbed the Sea and Sun Campaign, at the end of every summer.
This is Combs Beach. Garbage is strewn from one end to the other. Luckily, Ali Rokbi's Sea and the Sun campaign has gained a huge following over the years, as many people come to Combs from across the country clean up. They pick up the waste that has accumulated over time.
Despite the garbage being almost everywhere at the beach, we're trying to reinforce the culture of preserving the environment and putting an end to pollution.
People, including children, head out to the beaches carrying plastic bags and filling them with garbage.
We came here to clean and help with all our hands and efforts to keep our beaches clean. Starting from Combs, we will clean our beaches from the east to the west in order to keep all the shores of Libya clean and everyone can enjoy their time there.
Volunteers hope that the habit will take hold and beach visitors will start cleaning up after themselves.
And water scarcity is one of the main climate challenges Egypt faces. And that's why a project such as the one introduced by Shaduf, an Egyptian company, is a welcome occurrence. A hydroponic fridge was installed by the company that offers smart farming solutions with the additional advantage of saving water.
What seems to be just an average grocery refrigerator in Cairo is actually a hydroponic fridge, referred to as farmed here, which enables customers buy fresh vegetables and take them home with their roots. The vegetables inside are grown in a hydroponic no-soil system using water, supplemented with fertilizers and nutrients, pumped from tanks in the bottom of the fridge.
About 50% of vegetables in the supermarkets are wasted because no one buys them. But in the system, the vegetables are planted until someone buys them, so it doesn't go bad. The consumer takes it fresh and can keep it fresh for another week or 10 days to use at home.
The company says the system uses 90% less water than traditional farming and is plastic-free, which minimizes food waste. It also helps reduce the carbon footprint, as vegetables do not need to be transported. Skadov works on a variety of projects to integrate technology in farming and help face climate change. The company also plans to expand the project to other grocery stores.
That's Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.